great movies to videotape. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
Okay, and then what had been intended as a 5-year project was to get through some lineage. And
5 years, you slacker.
Tell me about it. Tell me, it was only supposed to be 5 years, but between the anecdotes that I received, which were not necessarily explicit or real because it depended on people's perceptions and people's memories, which could be faulty or some other way tainted, there was really no way to rely on any of that. So trying to go back using a last name and what somebody remembers and what have you has not worked. And the reason for that is because really we are somewhat divorced from half of the family to some extent, right? So we don't see Pa's family a whole lot, and when we do talk to them, there really isn't a whole lot of conversation, and what they are able to share is not really what we need in order to get through understanding what, who, what, where, why, when, and how, right? So the only other better way to do that,
Grab him, Joe.
the only other way to do that, and to do it with some level of assuredness, and the most scientific way to do it was to undergo a DNA examination. So it was saliva that I provided, and it was also swabbing the inside of my cheeks. And so they've done
Yours too.
yeah, well, listen, it's no different than what you guys have done. Provided you. But except I did it with a machine. Wait a minute. No, that's not. That is actually what I meant exactly.
You believe that one?
So using that, I thought the best and not only thing, but the best thing that I could do to give you this year for Christmas was a little bit of myself and a lot about us. Okay? So, given that, I have these which are printed out, which is exactly what we're going to look at right now. I would hand them out, but I suspect that some of you might cheat and go ahead, and so therefore I'm not going to hand them out in advance. I will go through this here and now. So,
of course it's PowerPoint.
Give me a Prezi, it's better.
all right. So as you can see, I made a couple of notations. This is just the head slide. This is about our ancestry, composition, and origins. The two notes that I've indicated on here, number one, I grabbed this family crest from the internet, and although I don't know that it has been validated in any way, I've indicated I don't know that that's validated. That's what's up there in a Facebook site. So I've noted that. And then number two, origins is really based on my DNA, which is probably going to be very, very similar for all of the siblings. So at minimum, we've got information on the 6 of us. Yeah? And this is presented to everybody Christmas. Okay, so not looking at the table of contents, but let me just very quickly tell you that there are 18 slides in total, so we'll take a look at these very quickly. But it's going to answer a number of different questions that we've had over the last number of years. The DNA population samples really are based on what they've done with world samples, and an example of 31 different populations nationwide, or excuse me, worldwide. So of samplings that they've taken there, that's how they've determined what is the most probable origins and ancestry. Okay?
Greek gods, right?
You are closer than you think.
Vikings. I'm not kidding.
You are closer than you might think. So, looking at European ancestry, we actually have 40.3% Iberian. What the hell is Iberian? I've looked that up. I've got that in definition, so you can look that up. But it's really in the European region. Sardinian also is indicated in the glossary.
We're part fish?
We are part fish. Yeah, we all are. We all started. Why?
Sardinia.
Why?
Got him off track. Stop.
And so just broadly European, we've got 4.3. These are the regions that are related to each one of these items that are listed up here. As you can see, a lot of them say 0%, so don't worry about the 0%. Just know that those are I left there so that you can see that we don't have anything that tested positive for us in these areas.
No
Okay?
French?
Yes.
I'm shocked.
No. Stop. No.
No, I thought we did have some French in us.
Well, we'll get through that.
Spain and then France.
Yep. So this is really where it's in this general area that is strongest for us.
Well, that's like the boot of Italy and North Mediterranean.
And yeah, so it's all inside of Greece. It's Italy. It's Spain. Yeah. So looking at Native American, we also have a really big mix in here of almost 20% Native American. I separated these intentionally because, as you can see, what they did is they put East Asian and Native American together for a 25.1, but I separated the two so that we can see how much of this is really Native American and how much is East Indian, or I'm sorry, East Asian. Okay.
Wait, so we're part Native American? Am I getting this correct?
Yo, 20% Native American.
Does that mean I get to collect the check?
Well, this is one of the reasons. This is one of the reasons why I'm sharing this with everybody. I'm sorry.
Isn't it 8%?
It's a much lower percentage, so we've got a very high percentage here.
Who's filing paperwork?
Right? So in sub-Saharan African, we also have some bloodline inside of that. 2.4%, as you can see, was with Western Africa. And
I knew that's where I got it from.
Well, here's the other surprise. When we go to...
You are the 2.4.
Yeah. So when we go to Middle Eastern and North Africa, so it's these two regions here, and they too are relatively strong, but our strongest is here in the blue and in the green there. But yeah, so we've got kind of the Greek, Egyptian, Northern Africa. And then this is just a quick recap of all of them together. So I did each individual piece, but then what I did is I recapped it. By the way, the information that's contained in here was synthesized by me, but not changed by me. The only thing that I synthesized was a way to look at this so that it's easy for us to understand. So I took not reams of pages, but a lot of pages, and I consolidated it into this. So we've got an idea of all of our percentages, right? I'm going to point to this here, 3.3% unassigned. I want to come to that in just a second, but I'm going to call you guys a knuckle, what is it, knuckle walkers or knuckle draggers, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But this was what makes me up, 100%, with all of these percentages. And then this is just another look at what this really looks like. I took out all the things that we are not, with the exception of Oceania. Yeah, which really is kind of like the Australia and eastern, or east of Australia, so that whole Pacific Islander kind of thing doesn't exist in our
Like Indonesia.
Yeah, right. That doesn't exist in us as well. Not there.
No Samoan, no Indonesian.
No. So,
No,
unassigned 3.3%. What the hell does that mean?
Aliens.
Don't tell anybody. No. But where we're not going to make anything up, this is part of our missing link. We actually have, and let's just take a look at the first top half of this first. We are 2.7, or at least I am 2.7 Neanderthal. And most of the population actually does have a percentage of Neanderthal. And the reason that I say that is because we can see what the comparisons look like here. We've got myself, 2.7, is us. Japanese, also 2.7. Chinese, for example, has a lesser amount, and you'll see that like Nigerians in the South African region have even less. So, does that really mean that we are cavemen or whatever? The answer to that is yes, we are. We all are. We have quite a number of genes, not just from modern man, Neanderthals, and Cro-Magnon, but we've got all of that mixed in. I put this in here as well to demonstrate what the different characteristics are. What the different characteristics are for modern human versus Neanderthals. So one of the questions that is posed here is, well, if Neanderthals are typically shorter and stockier and all that, does that mean that that's why we're not as tall as others who might be 6'5" or whatever? The answer to that is not really. They don't know. There's no real answer to that. But the answer to this altogether really is that we are 2.7 Neanderthal. So whose fault is that? I want to blame it on the old man, actually, because that would be...
obviously, at one point everybody's 100%.
No. Oh, you mean going back?
Of course.
But, so remember, there are two strains, right? So there were more modern type men versus Neanderthals that lived at the same time. At some point they came together and they spawned and they crossbred and all of that, and that's why we wound up with 2.7. And some have a higher percentage, but not by much. Not by much. I mean, we are at about 53% or 50% of all others. Okay, we are in the 50th percentile, which is exactly where we should be, like half.
So we're not abnormal?
Well,
normal?
Well, I don't know that we could say that. I don't know that we could say that.
Yeah.
So, parental line. I'm going to blame it on Pa. So, if we look at, and I'm going to do just a quick little, I'm going to go back and forth on this really fast. This is parental line, this is maternal line. And as you can see, where the origins are almost identical, although Pa is more responsible for the strength in this region, and Ma is more responsible for the region up there. And as it turns out, just so that you know, who was it that had said something about? I said something about Hanukkah and Schmutz and I don't know, and I said we're part Jewish. And I said, and I'll explain later. David, was that you?
I think somebody said Greek.
No. It was something to do with Jewish.
Different conversation, I guess.
I've had a number of, I've been dropping little
hints along the way.
all night long. But the reality is that based on our current bloodline, there is a very large and very strong Jewish background. In our, I know.
We get to celebrate Hanukkah now.
Yeah, exactly. So I think
Next year.
Is that where Andy gets his from?
Don't blame me. I'm one of the
He
younger
started a
ones.
long time ago.
yeah. So if I call you an ape at some point, know that I just mean that as a term of endearment. It's just, I'm just telling you, we're all apes. All right, glossary of terms. These are some of the terms that I talked about earlier. You can go read them at your leisure. Please feel free to read through them. A little bit more about Neanderthals and how they discovered, or where they discovered the DNA, and how they came to the conclusion that Neanderthals crossbred with Cro-Magnon and so forth. So you see here between 1% and 4% typically. Okay, so here, this is our gene pool, DNA gene pool. It's known as J2A1B. And all that means is that that's where they fit us in, and there's a chart that follows after this, and you'll see how that kind of fits in. But that comes from the parental line. And this talks a little bit about where that gene pool came from, where they originated. Please read this at your leisure. So genetics, this is what the genetics look like. I'll say I sit here, but the majority of us sit right in here as well. This is how they get to how this is coded. So you can look at this. You can look at that at your leisure as well. So this is just as a side note. Who might we be related to some extent?
Bono, really?
Bono, Benjamin Franklin. We've got DNA that is reminiscent of the Jewish ancestry. And if we look at this, Dr. Oz and Mike Nichols. Anybody know who Mike Nichols is? Mike Nichols?
Wikipedia.
Yeah, right? So that's it. So that no. What more do you want to know? You guys get to write the rest